The call came at 2 in the afternoon. St. Mary's Hospital, the nurse said. My son Daniel had fallen down a staircase at my sister's house. He was conscious but in pain. They were running tests. I drove there with my hands steady on the wheel, my breathing controlled. Years of training had taught me how to compartmentalize, how to function when adrenaline wanted to take over, how to think clearly when emotions screamed for attention. Daniel was 12 years old, bright, curious, passionate about science. Last week he'd won first place at the regional science fair with his project on renewable energy storage. His cousin Tyler, my sister's son, had placed fourth with a volcano model. An original. Exactly what you'd expect from a kid whose father did half the work and still couldn't make it interesting. My brother-in-law Marcus had been furious at the awards ceremony. He'd stood there in his expensive suit, watching Daniel receive the trophy and scholarship money, and I'd seen something ugly cross his face. But I'd dismissed it. Marcus was a cardiac surgeon, respected and wealthy. Surely he wouldn't punish a child over a middle school competition. I was wrong. Daniel lay in the hospital bed, his left arm in a temporary splint, bruises already darkening on his ribs. When the nurse stepped out, he looked at me with tears streaming down his face. Dad, he whispered. Uncle Marcus pushed me. I pulled a chair close and took his uninjured hand. Tell me exactly what happened. I went to their house after school like always. Aunt Lindsay was at her book club. Tyler was upstairs playing video games. Uncle Marcus said he wanted to talk to me about the science fair. Daniel's voice shook. We were at the top of the stairs. He said I'd embarrassed Tyler. Made him look stupid. That I should have let Tyler win because he's family. What did you say? I said I worked really hard on my project. That it wasn't fair to lose on purpose. Daniel winced as he shifted. He got really angry. Said I was disrespectful. Then he put his hand on my chest and pushed. Hard. I fell backwards down the whole staircase. Did anyone else see this happen? No. Tyler's room is on the other side of the house with the door closed. Uncle Marcus called 911 and told them I tripped. He kept saying it over and over while we waited for the ambulance. You tripped, Daniel. You lost your balance. That's what happened. I squeezed his hand gently. You're safe now. The doctors are going to take care of you and I'm going to handle Uncle Marcus. He said if I told anyone what really happened, no one would believe me. That he's a doctor and you're just a probation officer. Just a probation officer. That's what my family had always thought. My sister Lindsay married Marcus 10 years ago when he was a rising star in cardiothoracic surgery. Big house. Luxury cars. Country club membership. She'd looked at my modest salary and small apartment with something like pity. At family gatherings, Marcus dominated conversations, talking about his surgeries, his golf handicap, his investment portfolio. I let him talk. Let everyone assume I was the less successful sibling. What they didn't know was that probation officer was my cover position. My real job was with the Department of Justice, working in the Office of Professional Responsibility. I investigated misconduct by federal employees and licensed professionals. Doctors, lawyers, government officials. People who abused their positions of trust. I had security clearance 3 levels above what most people knew existed. My recommendations could end careers. My testimony had sent corrupt professionals to prison. And I had something else Marcus didn't know about. 6 months ago, I'd been copied on a confidential complaint filed with the state medical board. A nurse at Marcus's hospital had reported him for falsifying patient records to cover up a surgical error that caused complications. The board had opened an investigation but hadn't taken action yet. They were building their case quietly, waiting for more evidence. I'd been tracking it as part of a larger federal investigation into healthcare fraud at that hospital system. The orthopedic surgeon came in and explained that Daniel had a fractured radius, 2 cracked ribs and severe bruising. Nothing life-threatening but painful. He'd need a cast for 6 weeks and restricted activity. The doctor asked routine questions about how the fall happened. I told him we'd discuss the details with police and his expression shifted slightly. He made careful notes in Daniel's chart. After they set Daniel's arm and admitted him for overnight observation, I stepped into the hallway and made my phone call. Not to 911. Not to local police. To my direct supervisor at the Department of Justice. I need to report a federal offense, I said. Assault on a minor by a licensed medical professional. and I'm formally requesting that we move forward with the existing investigation into Dr. Marcus. I stopped. I had used chin. I pulled out my phone and looked at my sister's last text. Marcus Reynolds. My brother-in-law was Marcus Reynolds. Marcus Reynolds, I corrected. There's an active medical board complaint. I have a victim willing to testify about assault. I'm requesting immediate coordination with state medical licensing and local law enforcement. My supervisor was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, is the victim your son? Yes. Are you certain you want to handle this officially? Once we start, it won't stop. I'm certain. I'll make the calls. Expect the state investigators within 2 hours. I returned to Daniel's room. He was drowsy from pain medication, watching cartoons with glazed eyes. I sat beside his bed and waited. My phone buzzed 90 minutes later. 3 people were in the hospital administrator's office waiting to speak with me. I kissed Daniel's forehead and told him I'd be back soon. The meeting was efficient. A detective from the Special Victims Unit, an investigator from the State Medical Board, and a federal prosecutor I'd worked with on previous cases. They asked detailed questions. I provided detailed answers. Daniel's statement, the suspicious circumstances, the pattern of Marcus's behavior at the science fair, his documented history of ego problems that had been flagged but not acted upon. The medical board investigator pulled out a file. We've been looking at Dr. Reynolds for 6 months. We have testimony from 3 nurses about him altering records and intimidating staff. We didn't have enough for an immediate suspension, but assault on a minor changes everything. We can issue an emergency order tonight. The detective added, if your son's statement holds up and given the injuries, we have grounds for arrest. Felony assault on a child. If convicted, he's looking at 2 to 5 years and permanent loss of his medical license. The prosecutor leaned forward. The hospital has been under federal review for fraud. Dr. Reynolds is named in that investigation. This gives us leverage to flip witnesses who've been protecting him. Are you prepared for your family to know your actual position? They're going to find out anyway. Yes. They are. I went back to Daniel's room. My phone started ringing at 8 that evening. First my sister Lindsay, hysterical, then my mother, then Lindsay again. I let them all go to voicemail. At 9, 2 uniformed officers walked past Daniel's room toward the elevator. I knew where they were going. Marcus worked late most nights, performing surgeries or reviewing cases in his office at the hospital. He was probably still in the building, 4 floors up in the surgical wing, completely unaware that his life was about to collapse. The next morning, Daniel was discharged. I took him home and settled him on the couch with his pain medication and strict instructions to rest. Then I finally listened to the voicemails. Lindsay's first message: what did you tell the police? They arrested Marcus at the hospital last night. This is insane. Daniel tripped. Why are you doing this to us? My mother's message: please call me. Your sister is devastated. Surely we can work this out as a family without involving authorities. Lindsay's second message, recorded at 3 in the morning: they suspended his medical license. His lawyer says you're not actually a probation officer, that you work for the Department of Justice. Why didn't you ever tell me? Marcus said you've been investigating him. This is about revenge because he's more successful than you. I deleted them all. The news broke locally within 48 hours. Prominent cardiac surgeon arrested for child assault and under investigation for medical fraud. The hospital placed him on immediate unpaid leave pending the outcome of criminal charges. The medical board announced the emergency suspension of his license. My phone rang constantly. I ignored everyone except the prosecutor, who needed Daniel's formal statement, and the victim advocate assigned to help him process the trauma. On the 3rd day, Lindsay showed up at my apartment. She looked destroyed, no makeup, unwashed hair, wearing yoga pants and a wrinkled t-shirt. This was not the polished country club wife I'd known for a decade. Can I come in? She asked. No. Daniel's resting and doesn't need the stress. He's my nephew. I love him. Your husband assaulted him and you called me a liar. She flinched. I didn't know. Marcus said. Daniel tripped. He was so convincing. He's always so convincing. Her voice broke. The lawyer told me about the nurse's complaints, the falsified records. He said you've been investigating the hospital for months, that you have security clearance and authority I didn't know existed. I do my job quietly. That's how it works. Why didn't you tell me what you really do? Would it have mattered? You and Marcus looked down on me for years. You pitied me. You thought I was less than because I didn't have the big house and the expensive car. I never thought that. Yes, you did. And you married someone who thought hurting my child was acceptable because his ego couldn't handle losing a middle school science fair. I kept my voice level, professional. Daniel has a fractured arm and cracked ribs because your husband's pride mattered more than a child's safety. What happens now? Marcus goes to trial. If convicted, he serves time and loses his medical license permanently. The federal case moves forward. His involvement in the hospital fraud scheme gets exposed. He'll likely face additional charges. He'll lose everything. Yes. He will. Can't you stop it? Drop the charges? You have that power, don't you? I don't. Once the wheels are in motion, they don't stop. And even if I could, I wouldn't. He assaulted my son and then tried to cover it up. He's been falsifying medical records and potentially harming patients. These are the consequences of his choices. Lindsay stood there for a long moment, tears running down her face. I'm filing for divorce. I can't be married to someone who would hurt a child. Tyler is traumatized. He heard Marcus on the phone with the lawyer, heard him admitting it was intentional. That he taught Daniel a lesson about respect. Tyler should talk to the victim advocate. There's counseling available for family members. Will Daniel ever forgive us? That's not for me to answer. Right now, my focus is on his physical and emotional recovery. She nodded and left. I watched her walk to her car, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, not anger. Just the calm certainty that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. The trial happened 4 months later. Marcus's expensive lawyers tried everything. Character witnesses testified about his brilliance as a surgeon. His mother cried on the stand about what a good son he was. His attorney argued that it was a misunderstanding, that Marcus had merely gestured and Daniel had lost his balance. Then Daniel testified. Clear-eyed and steady, he described exactly what happened. The prosecutor presented the medical evidence. The angle of the fracture consistent with a hard fall, the bruising pattern on his chest matching the size and shape of an adult hand, the hospital's security footage showing Marcus's demeanor before and after, the aggressive, agitated body language. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Marcus received 4 years in prison and permanent revocation of his medical license. The federal fraud case added another 18 months and significant fines. His reputation was destroyed. His career was over. His marriage was dissolved. His son Tyler, now living with Lindsay in a small apartment, refused to speak to him. I never raised my voice. Never showed anger or satisfaction. I simply let the system work the way it was designed to work. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Daniel's arm healed. The nightmares faded with therapy. He went back to school and continued excelling in science. He never stopped being kind, never let what happened turn him cruel or bitter. That made me prouder than any trophy ever could. 6 months after the sentencing, Daniel asked me, "Do you think Uncle Marcus understands why he lost everything?" Probably not. Men like that rarely do. I felt bad at first. For Tyler, for Aunt Lindsay. But then I realized something. He looked at me seriously. You taught me that actions have consequences. That being smart or rich or important doesn't mean you get to hurt people. Uncle Marcus forgot that. He did. You didn't forget though. Even when everyone thought you were just a probation officer. Especially then, I said. The best way to have power is to never need to prove you have it. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. Then he went back to his homework, already working on his next science fair project. This one about the physics of falling objects and the forces involved in impacts. He said it helped him understand what happened to his body. His therapist said it was a healthy way to process trauma, taking something terrible and turning it into knowledge. I watched him work, his left arm fully healed, his mind sharp and curious and untouched by his uncle's cruelty. Marcus had tried to teach Daniel a lesson about respect. Instead, he taught him something far more valuable about justice, integrity, and the quiet power of people who don't need to announce their authority. One phone call had ended Marcus's career, his freedom, his family, his future. But I'd never raised my voice. Never made threats. Never needed to. The system I served had done exactly what it was designed to do. And that was the most powerful lesson of all.